The holiday season is a time for warmth, family, and light. But for one family in the quiet rural landscape of Dover, Arkansas, Christmas of 1987 would be forever stained by an act of unimaginable horror. This is the story of Ronald Simmons, a man whose carefully constructed facade of a patriarch crumbled into a nightmare, culminating in the worst mass murder in Arkansas's history and the largest familicide committed by a single person in the United States. The chilling, methodical nature of his crimes, carried out over a week in the shadow of the festive season, reveals a darkness that few could ever comprehend. Remember to comment, like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of the Calendar of Crime. Also coming soon to Substack. Ronald Simmons was a decorated veteran of the U.S. Air Force, having served for 20 years before retiring in 1979. He was a man of strict discipline, a trait that would later manifest in the terrifying precision of his crimes. After his military career, he moved his large family, his wife, Rebecca, and their 11 children to a secluded, 5-acre property near Dover, Arkansas. The family was large, isolated, and, as later testimony would reveal, living under the absolute, tyrannical control of Simmons. He was the unquestioned authority, and his word was law, creating a pressure cooker environment that was destined to explode. The violence began on Tuesday, December 22, 1987. Simmons's first victim was his 29-year-old daughter, Becky, who was 8 months pregnant with his child. The incestuous relationship was a dark secret that had festered within the family for years. On that day, Simmons struck Becky in the head, then strangled her to death. He then placed her body in a water-filled barrel in the living room, a chilling act of dehumanization and concealment. This was not a crime of passion, but the calculated beginning of a spree. The next day, December 23rd, Simmons continued his deadly work. He murdered his wife, Rebecca, and his 3-year-old son, Ronald Simmons Jr., by strangulation. He placed their bodies in the same barrel as Becky. The sheer coldness of these acts, committed in the home where his other children still lived, is staggering. He was systematically erasing the people closest to him, one by one, with a chilling lack of remorse. On Christmas Eve, the remaining children were called into the living room, 2 at a time, under the pretense of a family meeting. The victims were 17-year-old Loretta, 14-year-old Eddie, 11-year-old Marianne, 8-year-old Gwendolyn, and 6-year-old Barbara. Simmons shot each of them in the head with a .22 caliber rifle. The bodies were then wrapped in blankets and placed in a large pit he had dug behind the house, which he covered with dirt and concrete. The Christmas tree stood nearby, a grotesque centerpiece to the unfolding tragedy. Christmas Day brought the final 2 family victims at the Dover property: 21-year-old Sheila, who was married to his son Dennis, and her 20-month-old son Michael. Simmons shot them and placed their bodies in the pit with the others. In total, 14 members of his immediate and extended family were dead, all murdered in the span of 4 days, all buried or hidden on the property. The House of Horrors was now silent, and Simmons spent the next 2 days, December 26th and 27th, calmly cleaning the house and preparing for the next phase of his spree. The spree moved from the isolated farm to the town of Russellville on Monday, December 28th. Simmons first visited the office of his former employer, a petroleum company, where he had been told he would not be receiving a pension. He shot and killed his former boss, 33-year-old J.D. Chaffin, and a co-worker, 25-year-old Collie Frost. He then drove to a local law firm, where he shot and wounded a woman named Kathy Kendrick, who had previously worked at the petroleum company. His rampage continued at a convenience store, where he shot and wounded the clerk, and then at a gas station, where he shot and wounded another woman. The final confrontation came at a small insurance office. Simmons walked in, shot and wounded the owner, and then sat down, calmly waiting for the police to arrive. When they did, he surrendered without a fight, stating simply, "I've done what I set out to do." The discovery of the bodies at the Dover property was a shock that rocked the nation. The police, acting on Simmons's confession, unearthed the remains of 14 people from the pit in the barrel. The sheer scale and cold-blooded planning of the familicide were unprecedented. The investigation revealed the years of abuse, control, and incest that had plagued the Simmons family, painting a picture of a man who saw his family not as loved ones, but as possessions he could dispose of. Simmons was quickly brought to trial. He waived his right to an attorney and insisted on representing himself, repeatedly stating that he wished to be executed. He showed no remorse, only a chilling desire for the death penalty. The trial was swift, and he was convicted of 16 counts of murder. He was sentenced to death by lethal injection. Ronald Gene Simmons was executed on June 25, 1990, just 2.5 years after his crimes. He remains the man responsible for the worst mass murder in Arkansas's history. His case stands as a stark reminder of the darkness that can hide behind a seemingly normal facade, and the profound tragedy that can unfold when absolute control meets absolute depravity. Thanks for watching. Please comment, share, like, and subscribe for future episodes from the Calendar of Crime.